Good morning. It's Thursday, September 24th, and we're working on some more stuff. So I ended up lying on the last video yesterday evening, and I did end up putting most of the carb kit stuff together on this. So my suspicion is the problem that I'm having with this is partly because this little metal tab is not 100% tight on the plastic bits. And I don't know if it'll show up. So my suspicion is that little tab being loose is what caused the float to not be in the right spot, and then, caused the float to not be in the right spot to get that needle valve closed all the way and get gas through to the engine. So basically, this little thing can sort of pivot back and forth, or it seemed like it was acting that way last night, at least. So it seems like this float thing is kind of expensive and hard to find, like more than I paid for the carb kit, I think. And the float itself is okay, it's just that this little metal thing I think is not necessarily firmly affixed to the plastic. So I think what I'm going to try to do is see if I can, so the way this is put together, there's some pins that stick up, I put the metal tab on, they melt them down. So I think I might try to remelt and just get that tightened up a little bit. Yeah, I can feel that it's loose, but I can't get it to show on the camera very well. Okay, we're back together. I'm not sure if getting the metal piece remelted on was that successful, and maybe being a little bit loose doesn't actually matter as much as I think it might. Anyway, I was able to bend it and get it set to the right height, and hopefully, as long as what I remelted doesn't fail, it's not any worse than it was to start with. I think I might see if I can come up with another float for that, but I may need to do a little research and figure out what I need. So at this point, I think my game plan is, the wind is already coming up some, and it's supposed to come up more, I think. So I think the first order of business is that I'm going to go get the 8-inch auger that we used to fill the drying bin, and go through that and get it ready to go, and hopefully get it up to the bin before it gets really windy, in case we decide to run some corn this afternoon. We'll see what happens. That seems like maybe a long shot at this point, but maybe. I don't know. Got the 8-inch auger ready to go, but it's parked in the driveway right now. About the time I was gonna put it up, Dad decided he needed to mow, which I guess as long as I don't have to mow, that's fine. So we've got another one of those big wagons, the Demco's, stuck back in the corner of this shed, and the way that the rotation was last year, we didn't even use all three of them. These two little Parkers, which we use for seed wagons some, and used to use as a tandem for part of the wagon rotation before we got the semi. We're in there in front of it, so I was going to pull them out. The other one we've used for seed, I think every year, because we use that one, and then the little tiny old, kind of really rusty one. And this one I don't think has been out of the shed for 2 years, so when I hooked onto it I could tell that this tire was low, but once I got it pulled about 20 feet I saw it had, it's popped out now, but it was totally caved in. So I thought it was just low and it was totally flat. So then the tire came off the bead. So I decided at that point, rather than screw around with dragging stuff down there to try to get it aired up and probably not having much luck, I probably wasn't going to hurt the tire too much pulling it 200 feet, maybe 500 feet, something less than that at least, since there's no weight in the wagon. So I just pulled it up here to the slab and got a jack under it, so hopefully there's some hope that we can get that to seal without too much trouble. I don't have a bead blaster, so we'll see. But it seems like it's pretty tight there, so I'm hoping that I can just hook up. If I need to, I can take the valve core out to try to fill it fast, but hopefully we can get that aired back up. The other one, I think the other front tire is low, but since this hasn't been out of the shed for a while, we'll check all the tires and then pull that other big wagon out and see what its situation is. The storage shed that it's in is a little bit damp inside, so I hope the brakes aren't stuck. The adventure continues. I got this wagon pulled out, but apparently the wheel that was back in the very corner of the shed was flat. So now we've got a super single off the bead, and those are not fun to get back on. We're going to try to run a chain around it and bind it down and try to get the sidewalls to flex out. These tires are so freaking stiff though. We'll see how it goes. Well, as I feared, that was pretty futile. It's one of those things where if you have the right tools, not a big deal, but I ain't got the right tools. So I think we're going to take this to the tire shop and see if they can find a hole at the same time, because even though it's been a couple years, and going flat in a couple years isn't necessarily the end of the world. The other tires were up, so we're up-ish at least. So it lost air for some reason, so there might be something that needs some attention. It's about 5 o'clock almost, and things are moving forward slowly. We got some repairs done on the corn head by someone who can weld much prettier than I can, and probably more structurally sound also. So we ended up, he welded up all the cracks and ground everything off flush, and then we had actually another tube off of a head that Dad had parted out several years ago that we cut a chunk out of and then made kind of some reinforcements for where it ties into that cross brace or brace that goes back to the feeder house. So hopefully that should be good for another 50 years or so. Got the third big wagon ready to roll. Had to do a little bit of work on one of the brakes on it, but hopefully should be good to go now. Still haven't got the auger set up, but things are moving forward slowly. I also got some seam sealer put around the subframe where I painted on the front end of the grain trailer last week before, whenever that was. And another thing that I got is a new marker light for the center back here. I don't think it's worked as long as I've owned it. It had some moisture inside it. It's an LED light, and it seems to be glued together, so I drilled some holes in it last week, the old one, and let it dry out good and couldn't make anything light. So decided that it was probably pretty well screwed, but spent way more on that one than seems like should be reasonable for a 6-inch long piece of plastic with a few LEDs in it. I also managed to twist off a screw when I was trying to take it out. You would hope that stainless, I think it's a stainless screw because it's not rusty, but you would hope that it would not grow into the aluminum so bad that you couldn't get it out, but that seemed to be the case. And I had kind of put some vice grips on it and tried to turn it out with the stud that's left there, stub. Didn't have much luck. So I'm going to try just a little propane torch if I can kind of aim the flame down this way and heat that screw up and maybe like get it to kind of let loose from that aluminum corrosion. That's what this white stuff is basically rusty aluminum, or the equivalent of rust on steel with aluminum is white. So see if we can get that fixed up. I'm gonna have to get another screw, but I can figure out, I think it said what size it's designed for somewhere, so it can get one of those hopefully at a hardware store or something, and can stick it on with one screw for the time being is the goal, but we got to get this out first. All right, we'll let that cool and see if we can get it to come out. Basically what we're trying to do is get that screw hot so that it'll expand, and then we'll let it cool so that it'll shrink back to the size that it was before, and hopefully that'll allow enough of that corrosion to let loose or basically squish it out, and then when it shrinks, hopefully there'll be a little bit less strong bond that we can get that turned out, but it's got to cool off now. But the idea is to not get this hot, which it's warm, but basically have this cool and that hot. You can kind of squish things a little bit on a microscopic level. Well, it blinks. I don't know if $55 was a reasonable price to have it blink, but I guess it works. Well, it took a second pass with the torch, but I think we are finally coming out. We've got the authentic Nebraska made vice grips here. A little better quality than the Chinese ones, I think, personally. Problem solved. Well, half solved. I still need a screw. But we can use one to hold the light on for the time being. Alright, we've got a light. We're still one screw short, but within the dust there. Basically ready to go. I got the bearings on the traps greased and went ahead and greased the brake actuator stuff on the rear end there. I need to go through the truck a little bit. We need to check tires. I guess I haven't checked tires on the trailer, so the trailer isn't 100% ready yet. But moving forward,